Alright guys, welcome back to the first episode of our Road to Success series. Now for everyone that is new to the channel, my name is Saloni, not Crazy Medusa, and in the Road to Success 100% Scholarship series, I take you through different university in each episode. So one university per episode. We talk about their application requirements for undergrad and graduate students, what type of scholarships and financial aid they provide to international students, and I just break down everything about that university for you guys. So starting off, we are going to tackle Johns Hopkins University. Now surprisingly enough, I have never spoken about this university before, and I don't know how I missed this because it was definitely in my top list when I was applying to school. And being a Cornell graduate, this isn't an Ivy League, but it is ranked number 10 in the US. It was founded way in 1876, being the oldest research university in the United States. I mean, imagine getting a PhD in 1879. Yep, these guys were the ones to do it first. So today, Road to Success, episode number 1, for my undergraduates, masters, and PhD students. Let's get started with Johns Hopkins University. So first up, let's break down what we're going to do in this video. We are going to look at the undergraduate application, and we are also going to look at how graduate students can apply to Johns Hopkins University through the exact portal that Johns Hopkins recommends. So starting off with the undergrad application, the application itself can be submitted through the Common App or the Coalition platform. Johns Hopkins says so on the website. Now, there isn't any benefit of one over the other. Both can be used. It just depends on what portal you're using for the rest of your applications. In my opinion, Common App does have a wider list of colleges and more students use that. The application fee is $70 to submit your college application, and the typical documents that are required are school, counselor, mid-year and final year reports, letters of recommendations. 2 of them are mandatory and 2 are optional. Now with the optional ones, it's completely up to you if you decide to add those in. Maybe you have some teachers or some research internships that you guys did that can vouch for the work that you did. If it was in person, you can get those in at this time. 1 supplemental essay that we will look at in a bit, and 1 personal Common App essay. Now other than this, Johns Hopkins has mentioned that it is a test optional. It has a test optional policy, which means that you are not required to take the SAT or the ACT exam in order to submit your application. My take on it, if you are a good taker and you can score well in these tests, go for it. It always helps to show academic excellence in your profile. Let's talk about the deadlines that Johns Hopkins has to offer. There are 4 types of deadlines for undergraduate students. 3 of them are for students applying as a first year, and 1 deadline is for transfer students. So Johns Hopkins provides 2 early decision deadlines, one on the 1st of November and the 2nd of January, and then a regular decision deadline on 2nd of January and a transfer deadline on March 1st. Now the pros and cons of these deadlines, I've kind of listed them out here if you guys want to look into that, but the 2 early decision deadlines that Johns Hopkins does talk about, they are binding offers, which means that 1, you can only apply to 1 ED at a time, and 2nd, if you get accepted in the early decision kind of pool, you have to accept your offer. That's typically the kind of like the minimum requirements of what an early decision deadline calls out for. Tuition fee breakdown. Now this is something that's very interesting. It is not cheap to study at Johns Hopkins University. In fact, the total overall cost with tuition at $62,000 and all of the living expenses per year gets you at $86,000. It is expensive. Now this is a rough estimate, so maybe you can save $20,000 here and there, $5,000 or $10,000 here and there on living expenses, depending on whether you choose to live off campus, maybe sharing an apartment with some friends and save on living costs. But that $62,000 of tuition fee is not going anywhere unless you get scholarships and financial aid. So Johns Hopkins provides 2 types of kind of aid. One is in the basis of merit-based scholarships, and the other one is on the basis of need-based aid. So let's talk about both of these. The first thing I want to cover is that Johns Hopkins is a need-aware institution. This means that if you indicate on your application that you need financial aid, they will factor this in while deciding whether they want to admit you as a student or not. I've made a whole video about this, so if you guys are interested, you can check that out. Second, the need-based aid is up to 100%. So it's very likely possible that if you get admitted, you can get 100% financial aid from the university covering all your costs. including the tuition fee, living expenses, all of it. Third thing, there are no financial aid offered to international transfer students. They've clearly mentioned this on the website. So the aid is only for first year students that are applying after their high school. So with the two types that I mentioned, the merit-based scholarships are in the form of two different types of scholarship that Johns Hopkins offers, which allows you to either get funded 2/3 of your tuition fee or 100% of your tuition fee. Now, the merit-based scholarship is fully dependent on your performance as a student. You don't have to submit any new or separate application for this. And typically, you get this right when you start or even after you finish your first semester. The second type of aid is the need-based aid. Now, need-based aid is fully dependent on you and your family's household income, your household expenses, assets, and liabilities. So there are two options of applying. You can apply directly through the CSS profile. Now, the CSS profile is a separate application that you fill out. Again, a separate video to talk about that. But if you are having a hardship paying the CSS profile fee, because it is $25 for the first college and then $16 per additional college to submit the CSS profile, you can also submit your certificate of finances and the international student financial aid application. It's like a PDF file to Johns Hopkins separately, and they will process your financial aid request. So that's one way to go about the fee for the need-based financial aid. However, if you are planning to apply for need-based aid, you have to indicate that yes, you are applying for need-based aid in your actual college application. That means your coalition or your Common App. You have to select yes when Johns Hopkins asks you, are you applying for need-based financial aid? Let's suppose you select no. Later on, a few months down the road, you get admitted into Johns Hopkins. There is no going back and asking for need-based aid, or you cannot say that now I need aid. Nothing. It has to be done before you actually submit your application. Next, this financial aid application typically is submitted along with the college application. So I would say submit your college application within a day or two, submit the financial aid application as well. Let them have all of the information in order to make their decision easier for them, and they can see the entire picture. You're not putting any new information out later on. As an undergraduate applicant, you can be expected to write 2 minimum essays. The first is your Common App essay of 650 words. This is an essay that you'll write for every college. And the second is a supplemental essay, which has this particular prompt. Now, other than these two essays, there can be additional 1 or 2 supplemental essays depending on the different major that you select at Johns Hopkins while applying. So overall, Johns Hopkins looks for a few things in a student profile, and roughly this is what it looks like. On average, you're looking at a 1520 to 1560 SAT score, being in the top of your class, having a good GPA, and a very wholesome and well-rounded profile. Now, it's a little difficult to get about and understand all of these requirements because it's not just grades that Johns Hopkins is looking for. So if you guys need help with the entire application process, the Ivy League 101 course will be perfect for you guys. I will leave a link to this in the description below, but it is a separate undergraduate or graduate course depending on your needs that takes you through the entire application process, all the way from applying, real recorded walkthroughs, applying for scholarships and financial aid, all the documents that you need to apply, even professor outreach. So you guys can check that out. Moving on to our graduate applicants. Now, the graduate students apply directly through the Johns Hopkins website, and you guys pay a $0 application fee. They've kind of just waived the application fee for all graduate applicants. Now, when you create an account on their website, you will be prompted to choose a school. So you can choose an area of interest, and then within that area of interest, you can select what major you're applying to. And they have a wide variety of major options. Now, the typical requirements for graduate students is to have a bachelor's or a graduate degree. Obviously, since you're applying for a graduate degree, you need some sort of post-secondary education, a statement of purpose, your official transcripts, a GRE score that is optional, not mandatory, and a GPA of 3 and above. Now, apart from this, you also need 2 other documents like letters of recommendation as well as a resume attached with your application. So talking about the funding for graduate applicants. Now, typically a full-time graduate applicant can expect to pay anywhere around $62,000 annually, which is again a very high amount of tuition fee. There are no need-based aids available to graduate students, so masters as well as PhD students. However, there are stipends that are available. If you're applying as a PhD applicant, you have the options of fellowships, TAs, RAs, and these positions typically cover all of your tuition fee. So at times there'll be like $37,000 per year, and it's typically covered for all 5 years of your degree. By doing more than one of these positions, you can also kind of have a little bit to cover your living expenses too. Now for graduate students, so masters, non-thesis, MEng, there are less options available, but you always have RAs and TAs as an option that you can separately reach out in your department for. Some students also get their graduate degrees through employee contribution. That means they do it part-time where their employer pays for it, so that's an option to consider. And you also have the Dean's Fellowship. So similar to undergrad students, the Dean's Fellowship for graduate students is for those students that are on the top of their class, and you get a certain amount of merit-based scholarship on that basis. Now that covers up all the graduate funding that there is, and also wraps up this episode for Johns Hopkins University. So for those of you guys that have reached till this point in the video, we are going to keep up with our tradition of asking a random question just to see how many of you guys got till this point. So today's question is, what is your favorite binge-worthy TV show that you could like literally watch the entire show, all the seasons, one more time? For me personally, it's probably The Office and Friends, especially since I'm living in New York. I feel like Friends is kind of bringing back that nostalgic feeling. So drop yours in the comments below. Like this video if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments below which universities you guys want me to cover. If you have any questions about Johns Hopkins that I didn't answer in the video already, drop those as well. I will definitely try to get to them. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.